Hey, what's going on everybody? I just want to say in advance that for this video it was particularly difficult to rank all the ideas because there's really just so much good stuff in that book. Be sure to tell me which ideas you think I've missed and, maybe I'll make a part 2. Other than that, welcome to the top 10 ideas from Das Kapital by Karl Marx. Number 10. Commodity fetishism. This is the idea that economic value comes from the commodity itself and not from the human labor that went into producing that commodity. In chapter 1, Marx points out that this is taken to an extreme level in capitalism. We fetishize commodities not as products of human labor, but detached from that. When really, in Marx's mind at least, detaching the value of a commodity from the human labor doesn't even really make sense. Marx compares this to religion, saying, there the products of the human brain appear as autonomous figures endowed with a life of their own, which enter into relations both with each other and the human race. Essentially, the commodity becomes the basis for the capitalist system. Number 9. There's a difference between money and capital. Essentially, money can become capital if it is used not for consumption, but for the creation of more money. I'll just let 2 years ago Rafi explain this one real quick.
Money that is simply money and money that is capital distinguish themselves in their form of circulation. Money that follows the CMC circulation from a commodity to money back to a commodity isn't necessarily capital. However, money that follows the MCM circulation from money to a commodity back to money is converted into capital.
The capitalists have put the normal exchange system on its head. Instead of changing commodities for money and then buying different commodities with that money, they buy commodities with money and sell those commodities for more money. So money is thereby turned into capital. And while the existence of some form of money isn't unique to capitalism, the existence of capital is. Alright, so let me get this straight. The existence of capital is something that happens in capitalism. Alright, that checks out. Number 8. A worker must sell their labor because they have nothing else to sell. If they want to survive, they pretty much have no other choice than to sell their labor in order to have money to buy food and stuff. This makes them essentially wage laborers. By the way, I heard somewhere that we should make a millennial version of Monopoly, where you just kind of go around the board and pay rent everywhere, but you never own anything. And that sounds about right. Number 7. Labor power is what creates, but not always what captures value. This one is taken straight from chapter 6. Labor is the only thing that can create value. For example, this piece of paper is pretty useless, but if I apply some labor to it, I might make it very valuable. I mean, come on, look at this drawing. Who wouldn't want to spend some wages on that? Marx now calls this surplus value. Now this is important because later Marx essentially builds on this idea, saying that workers are pretty much being cheated out of their own value creation by the capitalists. Just a heads up, there's a whole discussion around the labor theory of value here, which we'll get a little bit more into in the next point. But just so you know, when Marx was writing this stuff, the labor theory of value was very common and really widely accepted among economists. Number 6. The rate of surplus value is the degree to which a worker gets exploited. Surplus value is the total value a worker creates minus their wage. The rate of surplus value is calculated by dividing surplus value by wage. Now, if we add the cost of capital to the cost of wage, we get the rate of profit. So now you can see that even if they aren't necessarily the same, these rates are definitely related. The more exploitation, the higher the profit. Marx describes this in more detail in chapter 9 of Das Kapital, so go ahead and read or watch that one if you're interested. Number 5. The division of labor makes workers more replaceable. At the time when Marx was writing, factories were just in the process of replacing artisans in Germany. Instead of specialists that could make you a whole shoe, You'd have 20 people in a factory that could all perform one small part of the production process. So that work is much simpler and easier to learn. Ergo, you can replace your workers more easily since their work becomes simpler. More simple? Whatever. While this was certainly true in Marx's time, I would argue it hasn't held up in all instances. We have the division of labor to a crazy extent right now, and we invent new, complicated jobs every day. In fact, businesses complain about skilled labor shortages all the time. Although, just between us, that really just means they can't get skilled labor at the salaries that they want to pay them. So just pay more and people will work for you. Can't believe I have to tell you this, but that's capitalism 101, man. Anyways, this now also alienates workers from their job and just from the act of producing something generally. If you're a very small part of a very big machine, you can't really tell anymore what you're making. This makes it harder to see the purpose of your work, which leads to number 4, alienation from work and from products. The worker becomes alienated when they invariably lose the ability to determine their life and their destiny. True, they're technically free and can think for themselves. However, their actions really become dictated by the profit-driven goals of the bourgeoisie. The worker is now just a mechanistic part of a social class. The condition of this life estranges them from their humanity. Number 3, a commodity has 2 forms of value: exchange value and use value. This one is also taken straight from chapter 1. According to Marx, every commodity has both a use value and an exchange value. The use value is the value that is taken from the usefulness of an object. And the exchange value is the value that I can trade a particular commodity for. So for example, I can trade this shoe for 3 bars of iron. So its exchange value is 3 iron bars. Although I really don't know why you would want a single shoe. Like, you have 2 feet. Are you gonna buy another single shoe for your left foot? That's weird. Anyways, this is explained much better and in much more detail by Lena in our chapter 1 video. Number 2, the rate of profits tends to fall, causing crises. As mentioned previously, Marx says that the value of a commodity essentially comes from the labor that was put into that commodity while it was being produced. Now, technological innovation through capital input enables more efficient production, so that means it needs less labor input. That's essentially just machines replacing workers. Since value is tied to the amount of labor necessary, the value of the output would decrease with more capital input. Capital input being a proxy for innovation here. Therefore, the average rate of profit would tend to decline in the longer term, with more capital fueling technological innovation. This is the reason Marx predicted capitalism would be accompanied by crisis after crisis. This is also called crisis theory, and it argues that economic crises are essentially built into the economic system that's capitalism. They're not a bug, they're a feature. Marx says in chapter 15 of volume 3, the real barrier of capitalist production is capital itself. So crises are just bound to happen all the time. And you know what that means. That's lots of white guys in a big fancy building looking into their screens and being really upset about numbers or profits or something. By the way, this guy here, his name is Pete Tuckman, and his claim to fame is literally that he has been photographed a lot while he was on the New York Stock Exchange looking at charts. Number 1, capital will inevitably concentrate at the top. This one is very straightforward. With capital growing ever larger as time goes on, because that's what capital does, it makes more of itself, it will inevitably concentrate in the hands of the richest. This leads to inequality. And Marx might have been right on that one. Just to quote a famous Oxfam study on inequality, in 2019, the world's billionaires, only 2,153 people had more wealth than 4.6 billion people. So yeah, that's quite a concentration of capital, I would argue. Alright, thanks for watching. I have to give credit to the users Elne Grobem Bonn and Of the M for helping me out with this video. They responded to my post and made some suggestions for which ideas are important, and I think most of them made it into the video. I think I'll keep asking for help if people keep answering, so if you ever see a post like this in your YouTube feed, keep in mind that I do read the comments and I do put them into my videos if they're good ideas. This is honestly just a genius ploy to get you guys to write my videos for me. So comment if you want to help out.